Good morning, everyone. You're welcome to stand with us as we sing.
All right, any runners? Anyone run the marathon this morning? Yeah, me neither. Well, it's great to see everyone here again today. If you're new here, my name is Lou. I'm so glad you're with us. Welcome. If you're watching online for the first time, so glad you're doing that. We've got a gift for those of you that are new or new-ish. Downstairs at the bottom, in the corner of the cafe, there's a little table, a little setup down there. There's a mug for you on that table. It's got a picture of Long Island across the front of it. Make sure you grab that. That's for you. And if you're comfortable letting us know you're with us today, you can do that by going to communitychurch.net/connect or by scanning the QR code on the back of your chair or on the bottom of your screen if you're watching along online. That'll let us know you're with us, and then we'll keep you in the loop with the stuff that's happening here at the church. And just to say thanks for doing that, we'll send you a little gift card this week in the mail. So as the church has continued to grow, communication has been a challenge because, we don't want to flood everybody's inboxes with emails, and we also don't want this part of the service to be hours long where we're just saying what is happening here the whole time. So one way we're trying to navigate through that is with our app. If you go to communitychurch.net/app, there's you'll find a link to our app, which is on all of the app stores. There's a calendar on there that will have all the stuff that's coming up on the church, at the church. It's right on the bottom. There's a little tab there. There's also a ton of other things on the app. All our messages are there. Our group discussion guides are there. There are a lot of resources we put on the app. So if you want to download the app, you can head over to our website, and that is the best way to know what's happening, what's coming up, what's on the calendar here at the church. In case you haven't heard or haven't been on the app, we are launching a Thursday night service on November 7th. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. Literally, since we opened up the church, there have been people who have asked me if we were ever going to do a service that's not on Sunday morning. Because for some people, Sunday mornings are just impossible. And as a church, for people who don't go to church, which is what we like to say about ourselves, there are also some people that just aren't open to going to church because Sunday morning is a day when they like to sleep in. And so this is us trying to do what we believe is really our mission as a church, by being a church for people who don't go to church. So we're having services on Thursday night. Those services are going to be at 6:45. So we'd love to see you there. It's going to be, for those of you who are wondering, it's going to be the first service of the weekend. So the 8:30 service will no longer be the first service. Thursday is going to be the first service. So if you come to both, you'll hear the same thing twice. We need help, though, getting the service off the ground. In a lot of ways, it's like launching a new church or a new campus, really, because it's on a totally different day. And so if you are interested in joining our Thursday night launch team, you can sign up downstairs. There's an orange table, and on that table is some details about what it looks like to be on the launch team. You'll get a t-shirt if you sign up. The t-shirt says Thurch. So it's Thurch merch. Get it? I make that up. So that's for you. You could grab a t-shirt, join the team, and then this Thursday at 6:15, we have our first team rally, really our only team rally. That's not on the day that we're having a service. So we'll get together, we'll talk about what it looks like to be on the team, what our strategy is, why we function the way that we do. It's a lot of fun. We haven't done something like this really since we launched the church or relaunched things back in 2021. So we're excited to get it going. We would love to have you on the team. So that is this Thursday night, 6:15 team rally. And then the first Thursday night service is November 7th, first Thursday in November. All right, well, that's all I've got for you. If you haven't been with us before, we usually sing a few songs after this part in the service, and then we jump into the teaching series for the week, and that's what we're going to do today. But before we do that, let's take a minute and pray together. God, we know that you are gracious, meaning you're in our corner. You are for us, all of us. Whether we believe in you or not, whether we're for you or not, you're for us. And we're told that your love for us is so great, so big, it's so grand, it's so high, it's so deep, that it surpasses knowledge. It's something that we can't even wrap our minds around. But God, would you help us to take one step closer to understanding it today? Would you help us to see you a little more clearly? Would you help us to sense your love for us in a way that we haven't before? God, would you refresh our hearts, our spirits, give us perspective, all of us here, God. We've been given some time to step back from the crazy expectations and the rush and the pressure of life. And so would you meet us in this time? Would you draw near to us, God, as we draw near to you? And help us to leave here feeling like we have encountered a God who cares, who's real, who's good, and who invites us to call him our Father in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, we're going to continue singing. If you'd like to join in, you're welcome to stand.
And sing with us. You can have a seat.
All right, so today we are kicking off a brand new series. If you haven't been with us before, we take our teachings, our messages, we group them together in what we call a series. And so if it's your first week with us, this is a great week to be here because we're starting one that's brand new. It's called Made for More. Made for More. And here's where we'll start, all right? I've got a question for you. If you think about your time, right? Think about your efforts. Think about where you put your energy, like how you spent your resources, your thoughts, your dreams, your desires, like the direction that they're headed. What are they directed to? Or a more simple way to ask this question is, what are you living for? Now, I'm not talking like, I want to take this out of abstraction, right? Like, not what do you believe you should live for, what do you say you live for, but if you were to look at the direction of where you're spending your time and your energy and what you really care about and what you want, what would you say that's headed toward, right? So now think about this, right? Like step 2 of this process. Let's think about like the things that we want, right? The goals that we have, the things that we're shooting for, the destinations at which we hope to arrive. Think about those things, right? So maybe for you it's a job. Maybe you've got this thing you're going for, like you're hoping, I just want to land that job. And that's the thing you're going for, right? Or maybe you want to find a person, right? Maybe you want to get married. You want to find that special someone. And you're headed in that direction. Like that's what you're going for. Or maybe you want to make a certain amount of money. Maybe you want to own a house. Maybe you want to own a certain house. But just like think of those things, right? Like imagine you're going for them. Now, imagine you get them. It happens. You meet the person, you get the house, you get the job, you cross that line, you arrive at that destination, okay? That happens. The thing you're living for and toward, you arrive there. The question from that point is, then what? Have you thought about that? What comes after that? What happens when you achieve your dream? What happens when your desire is fulfilled? Then what? And maybe you haven't thought too much about this, right? Or maybe it doesn't really hit you that hard. Like, I don't know, I'll find something else to do. You know, once I get the car, I'll get the house. Once I get the house, I'll get and right, that's fine. But you know what, like, is a little bit harder to deal with? When then what, the question, then what? It hits a little harder when it's not then what, but when it's now what? Like, you achieve the dream, and now there's a feeling of a lack of direction, right? Like maybe you've wanted to raise kids, and you put everything into them, right? And now they move out. And the question is, like, now what? The thing I was living for, it's gone, right? Or you make it to the top of your thing, and it's like, now what? Really, what this comes down to is what you believe you were made for. Because what you believe you were made for determines what you live for. It determines the direction that you're headed, or if you have a specific direction. It comes back to really a philosophy of life. So when Jesus was around, he had this thing that he said over and over and over again. It's recorded by all 4 of the people who recorded the biographies of Jesus. And he says it in different ways, at different times, for different reasons. But he says it so much, the idea is that this was just one of his things. Like he would say it, and it's like, oh, there he is. He's saying that thing again. And it's recorded in different ways, all right? But this, we're told, this was his philosophy of life. And maybe you've heard this before and it hasn't quite hit you, but it really has a lot to say about how we view life as a whole. Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, whether you're on board with the church thing or not, like maybe you're just doing someone a favor by being here today, it can bring some clarity to your life if you understand what he means here. And so here's this philosophy of life that he presents, okay? Here's what he says. He says, for whoever wants to save or find or keep, like whoever wants to save their life, like all of us, will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. Now, like first time I was introduced to this, like, okay, this is just one of those crazy Jesus things that Jesus says that nobody really understands and we can't do anything about it, right? But it's actually a lot more practical than you might think. At first glance, like my first understanding of this was like basically what I took it to mean was that if you gave up your life, if you risked your life and you lost it for like something good, you're automatically heaven. You're just like in there. If you're a hero, you get to heaven. You die trying to rescue someone, you're a hero. And so I'd have these like thought patterns in my mind. Maybe you can relate to this. I've told some people this before and they've had these thoughts too, all right? So I'm gonna need some affirming nods if you've had these thoughts. All right, like you ever been in a situation, maybe you're waiting for the subway, you're looking at the people, and then you think, all right, if someone falls, do I save them? Anyone ever have that thought? Right? Or like the zoo. You ever go to the zoo? We were at the zoo a couple months ago. You're at the gorilla exhibit. Little kid falls into the gorilla exhibit, you know? Am I the guy that's gonna go in and distract King Kong, right? Anyone ever had that thought? Nobody? Like you ever think, would I do it? Yeah, and that really for me, I still think that way. Sometimes my wife, Allie, will be in situations like that. She's like, what do you think? I'm like, you don't wanna know. But really what it comes back to is this belief like, okay, if I sacrifice my life, like I'm just in. God's good with me, check the box, I did it, right? But if you look a little closer, he gets a little more specific here. He says, whoever loses their life for me, this is Jesus talking, and the gospel will save it. And so then it's like, okay, well that seems extreme. You know, he's very clearly making it about himself. And so what do I have to do? Do I have to become super religious? Just do church stuff all the time? Like what, and that for me is where I kind of like got off the bus. You know, I was like, nah, I don't think I can do that. And frankly, I don't see many people doing that anyway. So what's actually going on here? Like I said, it's more practical than you might think, and it actually has nothing to do with heaven or hell. This is a principle that Jesus brought up multiple times because it applies to so many different circumstances, and it has to do with a holistic philosophy of life. So if we just look at the first part here, he says, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. The idea here is that if my life is all about me, if I am the ultimate beneficiary of everything that I do, if every one of my endeavors has me in mind, it's not a threat. He's saying there will be a feeling of loss, a feeling of waste. It will not be worth it. And you know this. You've seen this. I'm sure you've heard interviews on TV, right? You've heard people say, celebrities say things like, yeah, they're at the top. They made it. They achieved all their dreams. And they're like, yeah, there was something up here I thought I was going to find, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. There's a feeling of emptiness. And it's like most clearly seen in the people who ultimately rise to the top. But it's true of so many of us. And I've gone through this. Maybe you have too. You've got some dream. You're like, I just want to do this. I just want to be with that girl or that guy. I just want to get. And then you get there. You find that thing. You get the job. You get that check. You achieve that goal. You check the box, whatever it is. And you're like, okay, that was good. It was a good thing, but it was a good thing that we put in an ultimate place. It was a good thing, but it wasn't an ultimate thing. It still didn't really scratch the itch of dissatisfaction. There's still a feeling like I thought that was going to be the thing, and it's not the thing. The problem here, what we could, like the words we could put this into, and most of us wouldn't say this. Most of us wouldn't say this, but this way of thinking, it's the idea that really when we're looking at what I'm made for, the belief is that I was made for me. Like I was made so that I would be happy, so that I would be fulfilled and satisfied. And while most of us know, like right off the bat, okay, self-centered way of living is not a very fulfilling life. Like most of us would agree with that. But, and this has been a challenge for me, looking at like, okay, if what I believe, like what I live for indicates something to me about what I believe I was made for, how much of what I'm doing actually is about me? Maybe deep down, I'm listening to the voices that we hear in society, in every commercial, in every article that says, like, it's for you, it's for you. Like, I am the center of the universe, right? It's about me, and what Jesus is saying is not a threat. He's not angry when he's saying this. He's saying there is a feeling like it wasn't worth it. It's a feeling of loss. If you're trying to hold on to your life. I mentioned before, there's this famous interview with Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady he's made it to the top in just about every category. He's won Super Bowls, he's written books, he's got his own diet, he's the MVP, he's played on multiple teams, he's playing when he's super old, now he owns a team. I mean, he lost twice in the Super Bowl to Eli Manning, but we don't have to talk about that. But otherwise, for the most part, he's like extremely successful. He was interviewed and he was like, yeah, there's just got to be something more. There's like got to be something else. And so Jesus continues, like made for me just doesn't work. He says, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. Now, before we get into the details of what he says, what I think a lot of us can probably agree on, and maybe not everybody, but a lot of us, is that the made-for-me way of living, it's a really small way of living. And yet, there is something so appealing about giving yourself to something bigger than yourself, right? It's like we were wired to lose our lives, to spend our lives, to offer our lives for something bigger. We were made for that and we were drawn to it. And you can see little whispers of this all throughout society, right? Here's how you know. Anybody happy last night that the Yankees won? Anybody? Yeah? All right. Anybody want the Mets to win tonight? Yeah? Anybody excited about the Knicks this season? Yeah? Okay. Why? You don't play for them. You don't get anything if they win. I mean, unless you're somehow tied to their organization. You get nothing. And in the same way, when they lose, like, it hurts depending on your level of involvement. Why? No skin off my back. But we were wired to want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be seen as part of a larger thing that's doing something that's not just about me. And so we throw parties when our thing wins. It's why, like on a not so cheerful side, it's why political things often become identity things. It's because we want to be part of a cause. We were wired for that. We were made to be part of a cause. There's something deep within us that wants to feel like we're doing something that goes beyond us and is worth it. And so we invest ourselves into these things because that's where we think we'll find it. But Jesus, like if you can agree with that, he takes it a step further, right? What he would suggest is that we were made specifically for a mission, for the mission, for his mission. He says, whoever loses his life for my sake, let's put that back up here, and the gospel will save it. Now again, it's like, okay, what does that mean, right? The gospel. Let's just stop for a second. Think about that, okay? I think part of the resistance to this whole idea, if there is some, there has been with me, if the part of the resistance is probably what comes to your mind when you think, like, when you picture what you think he means here. Right? Like, what is he actually saying? What does this actually look like? What I've found is that a lot of times people don't want to, like, invest themselves in the teachings of Jesus because they don't want to become what they think they're supposed to become. Like what they've seen in other religious people. Like maybe for you think he's saying like, okay, you're gonna have to be on board with this. You know what that means? It means you're gonna have to be super judgmental. You're gonna have to obey all the rules, and you're gonna have to not be friends with people who don't. And maybe there's a lot of feelings of hypocrisy and judgment and guilt, and you're like, no thanks, not signing up for that. Right? Or maybe you think in a different direction. Maybe you think like you're gonna have to move to Calcutta and work in an orphanage and sell everything you have, because that's what it looks like to lose everything for me and for the gospel, for Jesus and the gospel. And I think it's worth recognizing that those pictures are off. They're distortions of a much more attractive, much more appealing picture. When we say made for the mission, do you remember if you were here a few weeks ago? We did a series, we talked about the Lord's Prayer, and there's a certain point in the Lord's Prayer where Jesus lets us into what he's trying to do. He says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The mission he's talking about is bringing the values and reality of heaven to earth. Right now, I'm not talking about fluffy clouds and angels. I'm talking about like human dignity, of showing like people a better way, of living a better way, of restoring like value to the human race. Jesus called this life to the full. He called it life more abundantly. He's inviting us to be part of a movement that pushes out darkness with light, that pushes out evil with good, that loves in the face of hate, that cares when we're discarded. It's a countercultural way of living, and there is something about it that is so attractive. Jesus would say, this is how you were made to live. Like, this is bringing heaven to earth. It's not being super religious. It's not like knowing all the religious words and saying all the religious things and checking all the religious boxes. It's living the way you were meant to live and inviting other people into that. It's a beautiful picture. And when the church, in seasons when the church has gotten this, it's been attractive. It's been magnetic. Like people have wanted to be part of it because they gave people, the church at its best gave people a vision of life that they were made for. Jesus would say you were made for this mission. You were made to be part of this, not just made for you. In that, there is a sense that you begin to find what you're looking for. Right, so think of it like this. If you're a visual person, I'm a visual person. I got a little diagram, okay? This might not be the best diagram, but maybe it'll help you get an idea of this concept. Right, let's say here's me. Or if it's you, that could be you. Like you're here and you've got a thing. I've got a thing. I want me. I want it. And I want to be a teacher, right? It's just a dream. It's a pursuit. It's a hope I have one day. Once I get there, then I'll find what I'm looking for, right? Or to some extent. So I have this pursuit and boom, I get it. And now, okay, well then what? Right? Like now what? I made it. I want to meet that special someone, and so I go looking for that special someone and bam, there she is. And now we're together and she's perfect. But you know what? I still, like, now what? And so there's another pursuit. There's like, well, what else? Maybe I'll write a book, or maybe I'll start collecting baseball cards or whatever. But there's this, like, it's like, well, maybe this, and maybe this. And maybe you've been there where you're like, I tried this and I got it. And I tried this and I got it. And this thing and that thing. And here I am at the middle with all these scattered pursuits, right? What Jesus is saying, what it looks like to give yourself to something bigger than yourself, he'd say it's like this, right? Instead of me being in the middle, like I'm part of something, a mission, a clear direction to bring these realities, this life to the full, like to live it myself, to wrestle with it myself and invite other people into it. And you know what's amazing about this? Like, don't miss this, okay? You can still do all the same things. You can be a teacher. Like, go. But do it because you're investing in the next generation. Do it because it's part of this mission. I'm not saying you have to preach at them. I'm saying you can love them like Jesus loved them. And be light in a place that's not always full of light. Right? You can get married and enjoy that relationship, but there's part of it. Now, the two of you are part of something together. Right? You can write that book, fiction or nonfiction, but you do it like part of a bigger thing. There's something that is driving what you're doing, and it's to show people the goodness of God. Jesus showed up to change the way people think about God. This is part of this mission. And it gives clarity and direction to everything that we're doing. And so what's I think is great about this is even if you're not on board with Jesus, if you're like, I'm not sure about that, that's a little extreme, too much, right? Fine. But you can't argue. Like this solves the then what and the now what. Like the then what's and the now what's are what else can I do in this direction? There's clarity, and it brings a sense of purpose and fulfillment to everything that you're doing. You can do the same things, but they're not all about you. It outlives you and makes an impact. You get to be part of something bigger. Now, the challenge with this is that Jesus said, like this movement he was going to start, he said he would do it through the church, which is filled with people. People like me. People like you. Right? People with problems. And maybe for you, like that's where you're like, no, this is where I get off the bus. If you had a positive experience with church, if you hear church and you're like, oh, good things, well then maybe you're like, oh, absolutely. Yes, the church is like the vehicle, the tool that God uses to carry this out in the world. And I'm thankful that that's how you feel. But if you're like a lot of people who did not have a positive experience in church, then it's like, no way. Like the sad reality is that the church has been the hero and the villain often at the same time. Right? The church has done some of the most, frankly, embarrassing things throughout human history. Some of the most painful and tragic things the church has spearheaded. And even now, I'm sure that there are a lot of people in this room who have met people who claim to represent the church and represent Jesus and his teachings, and they have been nothing but judgmental, hypocritical, condemning, and embodied everything that Jesus was not. The church is imperfect, and it's filled with imperfect people. But the reality is that Jesus said this is how he would carry out his mission in the world, through imperfect people. And so we have the privilege of being part of a movement that has been going on for 2,000 years and changing people's lives for 2,000 years, in spite of the fact that we're imperfect. You know, sometimes the challenge with church is that it feels like something that you go to, right? Or something you go and see, or you hear, like you would go and see a show or listen to a TED Talk or whatever. The way Jesus talked about church, he was not talking about a building. He was talking about a group of people. A group of people. Like, if you are a follower of Jesus, then you are the church. Like, this is not the church. Church isn't the people that are up here. The church is the people in the seats. You do this, and the way that we do this together is by owning his mission. And so if there's one thing that I would invite you or challenge you to take away from today, from this morning, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you believe that Jesus is who he said he is and did what he said he would do. When we talk about this mission, it's simply to own it. To make his mission your mission. To point your efforts in that direction. And it doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing. But it may mean that you change why you're doing it. To be part of this thing that has been part of the transformation of lives for years and years and years. We are one body with many parts. And we have the opportunity to be part of something that will outlive us, a cause that is so much greater than anything that you or I can do on our own. I was talking to somebody not too long ago who joined our team, and he had been here for a little while, and we're walking around the property, and he's like, so when are we gonna do X, Y, and Z? And then he stopped himself, like he had overstepped, and he was like, I mean, when are you guys gonna do X, Y, and Z? And I was like, nope, you had it right the first time. Like, this is a we thing. If you're a follower of Jesus, then this church, then this like community church, if you call this your church home, then this is the expression of that movement that you've chosen to be part of. And so church, like my hope for you is that this church will be not a they, them, but a we, us. Like it's you that's part of this. You are the ones that are pulling this off. I was talking to somebody else like recently who was contributing to what was happening here. He wanted to do something, he wanted to give something, and he's like, I just want to give back. And I didn't correct him in the moment because what he said I thought was so cool and so generous and it was so amazing. But really the language there indicated this way of thinking that I'm talking about. Like there's a better way of thinking about this. You're not giving back. You're getting on board with what's happening here. You're contributing to what's happening. You are part of it. Like we exist because people like you do things like that. It happens when people own it. When people own it, when this mission becomes your mission. And so, in a few weeks, we're going to do something. We're going to do Thursday night service. Now, Thursday nights, this is just one thing. This is one thing. But this is something, if you call this your church, this is something I want you to own. Right? The same way you own what the Yankees did last night. Now, what I'm not about to do is try to make people feel guilty if they're busy on Thursday nights, okay? Like, there are some people I know, Thursday night's just not an option, and so if it's not an option, don't come. If you're busy, don't come. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, you're on board and excited for what the Yankees or the Mets or the Knicks are doing because you feel a sense of ownership. You feel like you're part of it. Not that they're doing it out there, but that's us. We did this. We won, right? Like, that's the idea here, to own this, to care about it, to feel like your church is doing something. You are doing something in your church as a part of your church that has the ability literally to impact people's lives. There are so many people that I've spoken to that are like, yeah, no, never doing Sunday morning, but I'll do Thursday night. And so if this is your church, what I'd love for you to do is consider owning it. Like, pray for it. You can never come on a Thursday night and you can pray for it. You can feel internally invested in it. Like pray that God will make a difference in the lives and hearts of people on Thursday nights. You can sit in it. We need butts and seats. Like, and what I mean by that is we need a crowd for new people to come and hide in. Like really, that's how I started going to church. If I was the only one in the room, I'm not gonna be there. But if I can walk in, sit in the back and feel like, are these people nuts? Or maybe does this stuff relate to my life somehow? Like, that's a big part of it. You can sit in it, you can support it. In case you don't know, whenever we try to do more things, it costs more money. If you're somebody who wants to support the church financially, you can be part of that. You can share it. Whether you come here or not, you can tell people about it. You can get excited about it. You can tell your friends that you think would never come to church on a Sunday morning that they could still sleep in Sunday morning. They can be part of it. Or you can serve. Like I said, we're doing a Thursday night launch team. Just like we did when we launched the church in 2020 and when we relaunched again in 2021 after COVID. We're having a meeting this Thursday where we're going to talk about what it looks like when we launch a service, what we value, why we do what we do, the why behind the how. And we'll talk about the how. We're starting that this Thursday night. If you want to join, you can sign up at the table downstairs. We've got an orange thing. We've got t-shirts we're giving out. You can be part of it. You can own it. You can own it. And I think there will be a time where you look back, and maybe Thursday nights won't work. Like maybe we realize, oh, actually no one ever wants to come. And then we reel it in, we try something else, right? But maybe there will be a time where you hear stories about people who heard something, who did something, who changed something. Something changed in their marriage. Something changed with their kids. Something changed at work. Something changed about the way they viewed life. And it happened because people decided to live for something bigger than themselves, to own the mission that Jesus presented to the world, to be part of this movement that gives people life and life to the full. We're out of time, so we can ask the band to come back up here. But the thing I want to leave you with, what's been amazing about being part of this church is that we're teaching people about faith, like we talk about having faith, but it's also starting something new with nothing. It's also required a lot of faith. And so we'd start with a little group of people who owned a dream. And then it turned into a little meeting with a group of people who owned the hope of starting something. And then it was a plan for a meeting in a rented facility, which we ended up not ever meeting in. And then we were given a building. Then we did one service in a basement. Then we did 2 services. Then we shut down for a year. We're not going to talk about that. Then we did 3 services. Now we're doing a Thursday night service. And you know what question we've been asking at each step of the way? The question we've been asking is, now what? But it's not a now what without a clear direction. And the same thing can be true of you in your life. This is what Jesus wants you to be part of. Not just this church. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can go from one thing in life to the next thinking now what with a clear sense of direction, a clear sense of purpose, a clear understanding that you're doing something that's bigger than yourself. But it happens when we embrace the mission of Jesus. And even if you don't believe any of this, even if you're not on board with any of it, last week we had somebody who decided to offer his company, right, the trucks in his company, to send thousands of pounds of resources, stuff, to people who were dealing with the tragedy of all the hurricanes down south. If you were here last week, you know that. And we didn't know, but I found out after one of the services he was going to need gas money, and so I got a little water cooler, and I was like, oh, if you have got spare change, let's try to pay for his gas, and we did. In 2 services that morning, we raised $1,200 just to send this guy out there. And all week long, there have been things coming in and being dropped off, little stoves, little tarps, little blankets, little things, little whatever. And it's making a difference. And it's because people have chosen to do something that they do not benefit from. I don't know if you realize this, but if you gave anything to him, it was a net loss for you. You walked in with less. If you gave anything to the drive, you now have less. But there's something so rich and so beautiful about all of us together being part of that. And I think Jesus would say it's because it's stuff like that that you were made for. That's what it looks like to bring the realities of heaven to earth. This is the way we were made to live. This is the mission we were made to be part of. Let's pray. God, we're so grateful that you are so good to us, that you are generous, you are the first giver. And that out of that love for us, you've invited us to be part of something that's bigger than us. God, would you help us to really ask ourselves these questions, to be honest with what's going on within us, not for the sake of doing the right thing or of checking a box or obeying a rule, but because you want us to feel like we have found what we're looking for, like we're living the way we were meant to live. And so would you give us the courage to lose our lives, to spend our lives, to give our lives to something that is greater than our lives. And would you give us joy as we do it? In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
We're going to sing one more song. You're invited to stand and join us.
Greater things.
time. Bye-bye.